Okay, I think there must be some confusion because I think up until now is 9:15. None of you are online yet. This is Monday morning, 9:15. However, I think I still need to do the recording, conducting the class, so that you and the other class will be able to follow the progress. I think this message is quite short, and we have been encountering different kinds of delay. So what I'm going to do today is last week on the Tuesday class. Hello. Hello, Maria. Hello, Maria. It's okay. Your microphone is mute. It's okay. You can just stay over there because time is a little bit late. I will continue to do my lecture, and I think other students, if they join, I will also allow them to join. Currently, I'm also recording this lecture, so even if they could not get online, they can later watch the video by themselves. Okay, so back to what I just started. I mentioned that last week I had a recording on Tuesday class because Monday it was the classes was changed to online classes. So today I decided to do the lecture for Monday classes, so that and we'll share the recording to the Tuesday classes. So again, we have just moved to the chapter on inflation. Uh, Inflation is yet another topic that we can look at. It is it is different from original our consideration of time value of money. It is kind of time value of money, but later we'll talk about it. And it is a very practical issue. It happens in the real world, and let's go to the page, and then we'll see. Next page. Next page. Here, inflation. Here in this chapter, we'll talk about what is inflation and how we can measure inflation, which is not very difficult. It is just the change of prices over time. But it is different from time value of money that we discussed previously. And the inflation will cause some complication on our assessment of the real money. So we'll deal with them separately, and we can also deal with them simultaneously. Next. So what is inflation? Inflation is usually characterized by a rate too. So you can imagine that if last year to this year, the price of a certain product has increased, then we say that there's an inflation. For example, if last year the bus fare was $15, $15 this year's, which did not happen, but this year it becomes $18, then there's an inflation. The price go up. But that going up is not the part of the interest that we described earlier, because the part of interest that we described earlier was about earning power. That is, if we have the money right now, and instead of investing the money in a certain project, this money can earn additional money. So although we see this amount the money versus this amount of money next year, in fact, the money next year does not have the opportunity as having the money now and earning the interest until the next year. So the earning power of the money was what we described and what we deal with earlier on. So we said that the money we have can continue to compound interest. So just having that money alone today, after 10 years, the amount will be larger. So if we see the same amount in the future, and we want to know its equivalent worth today, we need to discount all these interests to the present day, which will become a much smaller value. So there's an earning value, earning power that we have been describing and using previously. But there's another issue which we did not consider, that is so-called purchasing power. If we don't consider this earning power, meaning that we don't consider the interest that we can accrue over time. However, the price of the product, as I indicated earlier, will increase no matter what. Or I shouldn't say no matter what, it will change most likely. Sometimes it's increased, sometimes it may decrease. And whether it's increased or decreased, it changed. This kind of changes change the purchasing power of the money. Okay, we'll see some example. So there are two parts. One is about earning power, which is what we had previously. One is about purchasing power, which is inflation, related with inflation that we are going to talk about. Okay, so and you can see additional information here. Earning power is about interest, investment opportunity, the interest, right? Interest is part of the investment, or it could be other investment. Purchasing power is changing of the purchasing power. So if the purchasing power decrease, meaning that in order to get the same product, you need to pay more. So there's an inflation. But there could also be a deflation. That is, you only need to spend less, but you can buy the same thing. Okay, we'll see some examples. Next. Okay, so this is very simple example. Presumably, let's just assume in 1990, spending $100. I think I mentioned about this towards the end of the last presentation. We can buy 50 Big Macs. Okay, but in 2001 versus 1990, that is 10 or 11 years afterwards, then the same, like 100 US dollars, you can only buy 40. So from 50 to 40, you bought 25% less, right? 25% less of Big Macs. So your purchasing power was reduced by 25%. And this we can convert and see clearly that originally per Big Mac cost $2 NT. Now it costs 2.5 NT. This change, right? The price change per unit is inflation. Next. Next page, please. So the way that we look at them, I mean, you can see that we can also look at so-called consumer price index. Later we'll explain what it is again. But we can also look at house expenses, automobile expenses like maintenance and so on. And buying bread, and bread is something very common. And people, at least in the US, this is something quite essential. So the price of bread will also be important. And hamburger, coffee, candy bar, dress shirt, which doesn't change too much uh, with respect to a fashion, but it's something more stable, but it does change prices. Postage, again, is something that people, and in the past, people use very often, and it does reflect the essential needs of people. And annual public college tuition. Okay, so for a while, people used 1967 prices as the base for computing inflation. So if you look at consumer price index, that is a mixture of a lot of different products altogether over this 33-year period. Um, to buy all the product, originally it cost 100, now it costs 512. So there's an increase of 413%. So similarly, you can look at all of them. I think I also mentioned that I think for most of the people, you probably would not expect that in the US, the inflation or the increase of the tuition fee is at a higher pace than any other, I mean, common items. So it's a lot higher, as you can see. It's 1,247% increase. This is just from 1967 to year 2000. I think year 2020, which is 20 years after year 2000, I think a lot of schools are like 10 times of the fee that you are seeing here. Next. So let's go through a few terminologies before we can do the analysis and try to take into account of inflation. First, we have just saw this consumer price index. It is about the prices of certain goods. These goods are more common goods. For example, food, housing, apparel, transportation, medical care, which we've seen previously. Okay, and typically purchased by urban consumer. So it is just a collection that people selected. It may represent more essential living needs. Of course, there are other products. There are luxurious items where the price change could be very different. Okay, so consumer price index is more on the common essential goods and services. Okay, so that we can understand how the purchasing power for ordinary people to live on their daily lives. There is also this producer price index, producer versus consumer. You can probably guess producers price index is basically to understand the cost of making products, right? Companies need to buy raw materials for making product. They have labor costs and so on. So these costs are related to whether or not the industries are facing higher costs, higher challenge, and we can also utilize this information to estimate if we are estimating our productions in the future. We can definitely utilize this producer's price index rather than using consumer price index. And there are these rates that we also use. One is average inflation rate. That is, we take a single items and we look at the price change. Okay, price change over a number of years. Every year there will be some change, but then we want to get a sense of how it changes on average over the period. So we'll find a rate to capture the changes over this number of years. But this average will not be arithmetic average. It will be geometric average. That is, you will sort of like the earlier discussion about interest. We have to compound them together, and the average will be taking the root of certain number of years. Later we'll see that. So the average inflation rate gives us the sense of how inflation is over this period of time, but it's year by year with the same inflation rate used. That is the average inflation rate. Similarly, we can do this for consumer price index. Again, over a period of years, every year there is some changes of consumer price index, and all of them, if we compound all of them, and the general inflation rate will be reflecting over this period of time, on average, how much changes it has on each year. It has to go through the same kind of compounding, or we can take the consumer price index of the year that we want to evaluate and use it to divide against the base year, and again take the average, that is taking the root over this number of years. We'll see some example next. So the inflation, here we have this inflation. We have seen this value in a table earlier. If we want to compute the consumer price index, we'll take market basket, meaning that there are certain items, a number of goods and services that we will consider. And we'll use a year, a specific year, a designated year as the base period. So previously, I also said that in a lot of cases, people use 1967 as the base year. So if a basket of product that we can bought in $100 by 2001, it becomes 512.9 US dollars to get the same basket of product and services. Then the CPI in base year will be 100, and the CPI for 2001 will be 512.9. Okay, it is just an index. The base period will be 100, and the year that we want to know will be compared with the base period to come up with a new index. Next. So this is the table that we can look at. If you look at at the top, these are the base period. Okay, that is in the table, these values over different years will be these price indices or indexes will be the price on that year comparing with the price in 1967 or comparing the price in 1982 and so on. So you can see that if you look at different products like gasoline, in fact, the price in 1991 is lower than the price in 1982 because, again, this index indicates that in 1982 it should be 100. Now it's only 66.9 and so on. Year 2000 is 92.6, which is a big rise comparing with 1999. So for this product, you can see that it's quite strange. It deflated, and it can also jump significantly. It can also be reduced significantly. So it's not very stable. Okay, but if you look at steel, it's quite stable. Right? After 10 years, it's only 10% higher. And then it becomes lower and lower, and then it's higher. But the rise and fall are in general within 10% and sometimes even lower. So it's quite stable. So we know that if we are dealing with steel, then we know that the prices of steel do not change that much. Even for passenger cars, it's increased steadily, but not that much, and sometimes it even fall a little bit based on the kind of cars produced. Maybe over time, that more cars, more inexpensive cars were produced, so that the average passenger car price becomes lower. Okay, again, these are about the prices that we can see directly. Okay, and for average inflation rate, what we can do is if we have inflation rate from the previous table, we can see that the inflation rate for year one is 4%. For inflation rate for next year, it will be 8%. The 8% will be the increase from year one to year two. Okay, so we are compounding. We need to compound these two increase. Then the computation we'll start from our base period and compound the prices for 2 years, because the first year is increased by the inflation is 4%. The second year, the inflation is 8%. That inflation is year by year inflation. So we compound them, and the result is 112.32. Okay, so that is to say that with this kind of inflation, first year 4%, second year 8%, in 2 years, what we can bought with $100 at base period, now we need to spend $112.32 to purchase the same amount of product or the same product. In this particular case, it's the same product. And if we want to ask what will be the average inflation rate, it will be like this. So it's 100 and it's inflated twice, right? Because we are computing so-called average inflation rate, and you compound it for 2 years, twice, that is the power of 2, will equal 112.32. So we can solve for F, which gives us 5.98%. So the average inflation rate on this particular product, over the 2 years is 5.98. Okay, next page. Next page. Okay. And average inflation rate, you can see that if we do that for the example we saw previously in that table, originally we computed the increase of the prices or the increase of the increase percentage. Now we look at the average inflation rate. And here you see, although previously we saw the changes seem to be quite big, but if you look at their average inflation rate, they do not seem to vary that much, right? Even for tuition, here there's only 8.19%, and others were 6, 5. The consumer price index is about 5% per year. Here it also indicates the, as I said, the power of compounding. Even though that 8.19% is not that much higher than other average inflation rate, but over time, over 33 years period, it will create a much bigger difference. Next. And general inflation rate is about consumer price index. We have average inflation index for individual product or service. General inflation rate is about consumer price index. So we can see that we can go through the same kind of calculation with consumer price index at the base year. And we want to compute the consumer price index at a certain year. If we know that already, then from base period to the period inquiry or specific year in the future, over time, meaning that it has to be compounded over a number of years, then we'll get this number, new consumer price index. And again, we can solve for F bar, and here F bar equal to this, so we can solve for general inflation rate. That is the inflation, more like inflation rate of CPI, consumer price index, over a number of years. Next. Again, we can compute it based on very standardized approach. That is, let's see if we have costs at the base year, and next year, and another year, and the third year, right? We can compute the inflation rate yearly. That is, first year against now, second year against the first year, third year against the second year. Those are yearly inflation rate, which can be shown here, right? This price minus this price is the increase of the price divided by the previous amount, this price, which gives us the increase rate. Similarly, for 2 to 1, we subtract the second year by the first year divided by first year, we get 7.25%. So these are so-called yearly inflation rate, year by year. Each year it is compared with the previous year. So we get these three inflation rate. One way to find the so-called average inflation rate will be, as we have shown previously, we compound these three together and solve for average inflation rate. Or more directly, since we have the price at the end of the third year, we can divide it by the base year, as you can see, which give us the compounded rate already. Then we take 1/3 power and minus 1 which will give us the average inflation rate. Okay, by compounding and then computing, we can solve for the same value. The value will be 7.69%. Okay, next. The second set of inflation terminology is based on what we just described about inflation rate. With the inflation rates enter into the picture, when we are estimating future costs or future prices, we need to compound this inflation with the money that the price that we know today, right? So if there's inflation, so we know that although it's $100 to right now, next year it will be 100 with certain inflation, and the next year will be even higher, and next year it will even be higher, right? Those larger value that we see in the future will be the actual value that we see over the next few years. Those are also called actual dollars. Those are the dollars with inflation. However, those dollars, if we reversely, if we see that these are dollars over the years, they look different, but in fact, their purchasing power, in terms of purchasing power, will be the same if without inflation. So actual dollar will be the dollar amount that we see over the next few years. But if we want to see constant purchasing power, that is considering constant dollars, then if we are buying the same amount of product over the next few years, with actual dollar, we'll see the increase in the amount. But if we look at constant dollars, for the next few years, we'll see the same amount because we are now considering constant purchasing power rather than previously. Here we are just looking at the amount, the number of dollar, but that amount, although they look bigger, but then the purchasing power are not bigger. Okay, so one is actual dollar, one is constant dollar, and later we'll do analysis based on these two. Next page, please. So conversion, of course, then we need to do the conversion. The conversion between constant dollar and actual dollars are very similar or identical to the earning powers, the discounting or compounding effect that we saw earlier when we consider earning power. That is by considering the potential of the earning of the interest or the return. Okay, they are, in terms of mechanism, they are identical, but they do characterize different notions. Again, one is on earning power, which was what we have discussed from the beginning of the semester until recently, and inflation or the conversion between constant dollar and actual dollars are for incorporating or dealing with purchasing power. Okay, we want not only we want to see the value amount, we also want to make sure that they have the same purchasing power. Okay. In the sense that we are at present and we are evaluating the future, but if there's inflation, although we saw a lot of money that we'll make in the future, however, that bigger amount may have a lot less purchasing power right now. So if we pull them together, then we are having we may have some misleading financial information. The amount of money that we make may not be able to, say, support hiring certain number of employees because we need to pay them higher too. Okay, so here this conversion from constant dollars with constant purchasing power to actual dollar. So we make sure that they have constant purchasing power, but when we look at the amount, the actual amount, it will go through a certain compounding process to get this actual dollar. So this actual dollar, okay, in year 3, with the inflation 8%, will have to be 1,260 to have the same purchasing power of 1,000 at the present time. And if we say that we want to represent the constant dollars in year 3, this 1,260 will be equal to 1,000 constant dollar in year 3. Okay, so constant dollar to actual dollar will be compounding the inflation rate. We assume that every year we have this amount of money, meaning that we want to have the money that have the same purchasing power, always capture the purchasing power. And however, the actual dollar, that is the surface amount that we can see, will have to be bigger. So actual dollar will become 1,260, whereas the constant dollar, the amount of constant dollar will still be 1,000, which is the same as, that is with the purchasing power of $1,000 at the present time, considering 8% average inflation rate. Okay, next page. So if we compute it, you can see constant dollars. This is a cash flow. Conversion factor to actual dollar. For the current time, the constant dollar and actual dollars will be the same. For the first year, because there's a 5% inflation rate, this constant dollar will need to be multiplied by 1 plus 5%. This will be the actual dollar that we'll see. For the following year, we have to compound it twice versus the present time, right? Versus the present time, so that it becomes this number, and so on. Okay, so the farther away you are, the more inflation you will get, and the higher the actual value you will see. However, the purchasing power, the amount with the purchasing power is in fact smaller, or this actual dollar doesn't have the same purchasing power as we had in the beginning. In order to know what exactly the purchasing power is, you need to compute the constant dollar, which represent the same purchasing power that we have at the present time. Okay, these descriptions have not considered earning power. We are only talking about inflation and purchasing power. Of course, later when we compute their present worth, we need to consider earning power. Then we still need to discount all these values to the present time to get the present worth, which is considering the also considering the earning power. Okay, here we have tried to maintain on this column, maintain the constant purchasing power. Then we want to find the equivalent worth of these constant dollars. Then we need to, again, discount them back based on the interest rate. And here is based on the inflation rate. Okay, so so the process or the mechanisms are almost identical. Discounting interest, compounding interest, compounding inflation rate, discounting or deflate the inflation process, they are identical. Okay, and they can be later joined together to compute directly from actual dollars all the way to the present worth. Okay, next. And if you, this is just another way to look at it, but it's not complicated. These are the cash flow diagram, which will reflect the table in the previous slide about different net cash flow at different years, and they need to be compounded. They need to be converted into actual dollars if we want to have actual dollar, and you can see that through the computation, right? Different compounding factor, and we'll come out with larger actual dollars. Right? And again, these are the numbers that you will see, and these are numbers representing the same buying power as it is in the present, in the time zero. Next. And we can also convert from actual to constant, which is just the reverse of what we have. So in year three, and if this is the value, we'll do this discounting or deflation. When it is the power is positive, we say that it's inflation because it's getting bigger and bigger. When we want to take that effect out, we say we deflate it. Okay, so from actual dollar to constant dollar, we go through this deflation process. Deflated for 3 years, which is -3, and we get incidentally 1,000. Okay. Next. And the conversion will be just as we have shown, right? These are the actual dollars now. The first column, this column will be actual dollar, and we deflate them individually based on how far they are from the base period. The farther away, they will be deflated more time and more years, right? More periods. And the constant value, you see these three, these four, or these five are of the same value, but you see the constant dollars, meaning that the actual purchasing power will be different. And the farther away it is, the smaller the constant dollar it will be. Okay. And if we can look at their the loss of purchasing power from actual dollar to constant dollars, actual dollars actually lose a purchasing power gradually. Okay, so here, from here to here, right, you can, this 20,000 can only buy 16,000 plus worth of the product in the fourth year. Okay, so it has lost the purchasing power by 17.73%. Next. And furthermore, we will look at the equivalence calculation. Okay, we still want to calculate equivalence. Remember, previously we have looked at how we develop cash flow or net cash flow to compute, to evaluate the project, right? We want to evaluate a certain project. Here we're just saying that we have to consider other factors. One of them is inflation or deflation. And even if we take out the factor of inflation and deflation, then we still have, say, an alternative over a number of years. We still need to take this this constant dollar net cash flow and convert them into their present worth before we can compare. That is what we mean by equivalence. We want to have this financial equivalence calculation under inflation. So there are two ways to do it. Since we have constant dollar, we have actual dollar. So for sure, we may deal with constant dollar or actual dollars individually. But in the end, what we really want to see will be constant dollar analysis. Anyway, so we have constant dollar with actual dollar. So in terms of interest rate, we also have interest rate for constant dollar. That is, we have taken out the influence of inflation. So it is so-called inflation-free interest rate. You can also think of it a little bit like effective interest rate. Okay, but it's okay. You just think of this inflation-free, meaning that it has taken out the influence of inflation. So basically, we have converted. We have when we are dealing with the money, those money will be constant dollars. So we are using this inflation-free interest rate. But if we still keep the inflation rate for showing the cash flow, and when we are dealing with the interest rate, we have to use so-called market interest rate. That is, the interest rate is not only the interest rate for earning power, it has also incorporated inflation. So it's called inflation-adjusted interest rate. It's compounding earning power and purchasing power together. So this is, if we look at the appearance, the number, and over time, you will see this interest rate. However, the true interest rate should be the interest rate without inflation, which is this inflation, inflation-free interest rate. Okay, again, these are the two. And the analysis that we can do for finding equivalence will be in two ways. One will be using constant dollar analysis. Up until now, we are doing constant dollar analysis. I mean, from the beginning of the semester until before this chapter, we were doing constant dollar analysis. We assume that we have already adjusted all the, we have taken out all the inflation factor, and the number that we have seen were with the constant purchasing power. Okay, but here we could also use actual dollar analysis. That is, we have those money haven't been adjusted. Those money are just the number that we have seen. We haven't adjusted for purchasing power. So you can see that they are corresponding. If we are dealing with constant dollar, we can use inflation-free interest rate. And we can do a constant dollar analysis. And if we are dealing with actual dollars, then we can use market interest rate, and we can do this actual dollar analysis. Even though we say actual dollar analysis, in fact, in the end, we'll still convert it into constant dollar and get the equivalence. It is just that in the earlier stage of the cash flow development, we'll develop the cash flow based on actual dollar. Again, up until this chapter, in the past, we only deal with constant dollar analysis. We assume that the number that we've seen were all constant dollar. They have already taken out all the inflation. Then we discount these monies earning power and to get the equivalence that we have calculated. Again, all through the semester. Why do people use actual dollar analysis? Next. Oh, well, I'll talk about it later. But here, I think I have explained what is the inflation-free interest rate. If we consider inflation, considering the earning power together, we'll see a much bigger interest rate. However, a part of that interest rate or that large interest rate value come from probably inflation. So we need to take it out so that we understand that what actually earning power of the project it has. Otherwise, a lot of these for example, if there isn't any earning power, everything comes from inflation. Although you see this rate, however, after the project, this amount of money, if you adjust it with the amount of money during the project life cycle, you adjusted them, you took out all the inflation factor, you may find that you are not making any money, or you are even losing money, right? In terms of constant purchasing power. Okay, so inflation-free interest rate will be smaller. If you consider market interest rate, it is a combined effect of earning power and purchasing power. And we anticipate the change of purchasing power, and we know that the money that we have earning power. These two compounding together will see a much bigger interest rate. However, that market interest rate is not the true earning power that we have on the project. And this market interest rate is called inflation adjusted interest rate. Next. And the two analyses I have already described. One is constant dollar analysis based on constant dollar, and another is constant dollar actual dollar analysis. And constant dollar analysis, if you want to find the equivalence, is straightforward. If we only want to use this method, so first we estimate everything in constant dollar. So all the data we have represents as constant dollar. Up until now, this is what we use, and you use inflation-free interest rate, which is the interest rate we used previously. Okay, it is the interest rate reflecting the earning power. If we use actual dollar analysis, and all the data that we use will be in actual dollar. So we anticipate the inflation. So we change everything for the following years, future times, with the inflation. I introduce all these inflation. And after we have those data, in fact, we can use so-called inflation adjusted interest rate, which is the market interest rate, to get the equivalent words. That is, bringing them, for example, to the present time to get present words. Since your data are actual dollars, so you can use this inflation adjusted interest rate, which is the combine of two interest rate, and convert this net cash flow in actual dollars to the present words directly. Right? You probably can understand. Here is constant dollar. There's no inflation. Of course, the interest rate should be no inflation. Here, actual dollars has incorporated inflation. So if you want to find the equivalent words, then you have to have the interest rate for earning power and the interest rate for inflation compounded together. So you have this inflation adjusted interest rate or market interest rate as an interest rate to bring all these cash flow to the inflation equivalent words. Okay. All these cash flow represented in actual dollars to the true present worth of the same purchasing power and earning power. Okay. Next. So constant dollar analysis will be straightforward because there's no inflation. Right? Here it says again, all economic analysis up to this point is in fact constant dollar analysis. So there's no inflation, or the inflation part has been taken out of the cash flows. So that we have been looking at only constant dollars. Then we can do it directly. The reason of using constant dollar analysis, of course, it is to reflect the true value. In fact, every company wants to know the true value, like purchasing power and earning power. However, for private sectors, because they need to deal with their income tax, right? So if you remember, income tax is based on the dollar amount that you see rather than the earning power or the purchasing power. When we deal with the income taxes, it looks at the actual transaction, all dollars or the allocated allowed allocated amount on that year. So it's just service dollars. So those are actual dollars, and you can compute taxable income, and you can use depreciation and so on. So everything has to be in actual dollar. So private industry. So it is actual dollar analysis, so-called actual dollar analysis, because we want to compute during the process. But in the end, both approaches will still ended up getting the present worth based on the same earning power and the same purchasing power. That's the point. Although the approaches are different, meaning that one is having constant dollar to begin with and do the evaluation. The other is using actual dollar to begin with to do analysis until last moment when we want to get the present worth or the equivalent worth. At that time, both methods will bring us to the equivalent worth based on the same earning power and the same purchasing power. Okay, next. So actual dollar analysis, earlier for constant dollar analysis, straightforward. It just use the same methods. I mean, we have been doing that from the beginning. Although they are influence of inflation or deflation, those factors have already been removed from the cash flow, and the interest rate that we use, or the same interest rate that we used previously, that is the interest rate without considering inflation or deflation. But actual dollar analysis means that the data that we have will be denoted in actual dollar. So the first thing that there are two ways. One is we have actual dollars to begin with. So we want to bring all cash flow to have common purchasing power. Okay. Which means that we want to have deflated numbers, that is numbers which take out all the inflation influences to get constant dollars. So step one is to convert actual dollar to constant dollar, that is to have common purchasing power. The second step will be considering the earning power, that is we do the discounting of net cash flow to get the say the present worth. If we are computing the present worth, right? So the first step is taking out the inflation. The second one is to take into consideration of the earning power, so that we still get the equivalent worth. Yeah, because we always talk about present worth, so we'll get the present worth, which have the same purchasing power. That amount should have represent the amount that have the same purchasing power. Another way is what I have already alluded to. That is, if we have actual dollars, everything are in actual dollars. The cash flow diagrams are in actual dollars. What we can do is we can compute market interest rate. That is a compounding of this earning power and purchasing power, like two together. And that interest rate, we can use that interest rate. Then we basically combine these two steps together. That is, we have this extra dollars cash flow, and we don't need to convert one and convert the second one. We can use this market interest rate or tax inflation adjusted interest rate, do the adjusted discount approach to bring them to the equivalent worth. Again, for present worth, it is bring all the value to the present time, and every step we need to take out the inflation and also the earning power, which have already been compounded into a larger interest rate. Next. So if we do the steps separately, then we'll have actual dollars converted to constant dollar by deflation, right? Actual dollar the number looks bigger, need to be smaller. The farther away from now need to be deflated more times, right? Here is 4 times, looks smaller. Okay, this is the first step, that is converting actual dollar cash flow into constant dollar cash flow. Next. Then with constant dollar cash flow, we need to discount this value. So 5% here is the interest rate. Okay? This process is identical to what we have done previously. That is, we have net cash flow. They were in constant dollar to begin with, and we need to discount them. Then we get equivalent present worth of them. If we add them together, we'll get equivalent present worth. Okay, this equivalent present worth, this is represent the dollar amount of the same purchasing power. Okay, next. If you look at the figure, it's a lot easier to understand. That is, we have constant dollars, right? This is from the table previously. Year 0 is minus 75,000 and so on. And these are actual dollars. They can be converted to constant dollars first. And these are smaller values. And these constant dollar will be discounted of their earning power. So this is year 0, this is the first year, it becomes smaller and so on. Right? Again, this second process is identical to what we have done previously. This first process is deflation of the actual dollar to constant dollar. Next. And adjusted discount methods use so-called market interest rate. Market interest rate need to be discounted, right? Meaning that we first take out the inflation. Then we consider the inflation-free interest rate, which is the interest rate for earning power. We need to discount once. This we call deflation. Then this we call discount, and it is dividing this and dividing this, which will be like this. Okay, and we said that we have this adjusted discount method. We have this market interest rate. So it is the actual dollars divided by this or discounted by this market interest rate equal to the present worth. So these two should be the same, which is this. So again, we cancel out, we solve, and we found out that market interest rate can be computed by adding market inflation-free interest rate plus average interest rate plus the multiplication of these two. Okay, next. So instead of going through two steps, if we can compute the market interest rate and do not the market interest rate, we can, yeah, it is market interest rate. We can do this adjusted discounted method. We adjust the inflation and we discounted the earning power, and we can get this market interest rate directly, which equals, for the previous example, inflation rate was 10% and the interest rate is 5%. So 10% plus 5% plus the multiplication of these two, and we get 15.5%. So if we have cash flow in actual dollars, this is cash flow in actual dollars, we can multiply directly with the 1 plus this market interest rate. We discount it directly into equivalent present worth, all of them, right? Meaning we have compounded two discounting process into one, and we can compute their present worth directly for each year, and we add them together to get the equivalent present worth. Right? If you compare this value with the value we found previously, going through two steps, which should be identical, and they are identical. Okay, next. And you can also see the cash flow diagram, right? If you compound it twice. And again, because the compounding process, discounting process is very similar to given F, phi P, and we have this interest rate, 15.5% in the previous slide, which is the market interest rate, and for one period. So you can multiply using the factor using, again, identical mechanism as if we are dealing with the earning power, right? So again, we can discount it once, discount it for 2 periods, 3 periods, 4 periods, and 5 periods. And these are the equivalent words, present equivalent words, and you add them together, you get 45,268. Again, it's the same as what we've seen previously. Next. And so previously we see that there were two steps. For actual dollars, we need to convert once and twice to get the present worth and come out with the equivalent present worth. But here we use this market interest rate, which is 15.5%. So each of them will convert directly, that is discount by this factor to get the present worth. And you add them together, it will come to the same 45,268. Okay, next. Still bear with me. Let me finish this and we'll finish the inflation part. Sometimes the problem may not be as simple as we saw previously. Here we are having a composition of a different cash flow. Here we are dealing with something like we want to attend college, and when we are 18 years old, or you can imagine that in the future you have children, or you just have one child, and you assume that the child will attend college when child becomes 18 years old, and the tuition then will be 30,000, and assuming that the tuition stay the same, that is in constant dollar, the values will be 30,000. However, because you are buying the same education, right? So the constant dollar should be the same. However, you know that there will be inflation, like as we have seen previously. What we have seen in the U.S. for public colleges is more than 8% per year. Let's just assume that is 6%. Okay, 6%. Okay, so what we are trying to do here is we want to know the if right now is 30,000. If we want to start, because the problem here didn't explain very clearly, we want to start saving for the kids. Every year we want to put in a certain amount of money, and we want to save enough money so that the kids can we can pay for their tuition over the 4 years. We'll start from when they are 5 years old, so we can save for 10 years. Then for the next 4 years, the saving will be sufficient to pay for their tuition. So what we can do is, because these are two things, we are given this, and we want to know how much that we need to save every year. But if you think of saving money every year, right? You put in money every year. That amount, every year you want to put in the same amount. That every year you see will be actual dollar. In fact, will be actual dollar. And here you are looking at constant dollar. So what you need to do is you also want to convert them into actual dollar, so that you can process the cash flow with the same methods. Okay, next. If you look at this picture, it will be a lot easier for you to understand. You need to save a certain amount of money. And saving thing, you can imagine that it's just what you see on that year. So those are actual dollars, right? Actual dollars. So every year, in fact, every quarter you save, every 3 months you save certain amount of money over the 10 years period. then you will use the money to pay for the tuition for the next 4 years. And we want to know how much you need to save every year over the 10-year period. So it's not, in fact, it's not that difficult, because here you have extra dollar. So originally it said that, oh, right now the tuition is 30,000. First you compute these. These are the inflation after more than 10 years, 11, 12, 13 years. These will be the tuition that we see when the kid has reached 18 years, 19, 20, and 21 years old. But we were asking how much money that we need to save over this period, and the saving will be done quarterly, that is every 3 months, and we want to find this equal amount that we'll save. So it's in some sense it's quite straightforward. That is, this amount here should be equal to this amount, right? So this amount, these are the actual dollar, and we want to discount them back to this point. And versus this amount, which are A, we find F, and it's compounded quarterly, because every quarter that you do that for 48 quarters, and multiply by this should be A, right? The constant, this constant value. These two values need to be the same. So once you find this coefficient, either by computation or from the back of the appendices of the book, then you can basically compute C, which is 2,888, around 2,888 per quarter. Every 3 months, you need to save up that amount of money so that you can pay for your tuition 10 years from now and for the next 4 years. As you can see, that it's a lot of money. Right from the beginning, you need to pay for, start to save. But these amounts seem to be the same. But in fact, the values are lower and lower. Right? If you think of the equivalent words, and if you think of the inflation, it's in fact a lot lower. But what you can see is this number. That when you pay it in the beginning, is quite heavy. But as times go by, in fact, the value of this is getting smaller and smaller. Okay, so this is sort of a little bit more complicated than what we have seen previously. But again, this will serve as a very good example, allowing to think of actual dollars. Why we can use actual dollar to, we still can use actual dollars, and also this earning power, actual dollar here, and earning power to convert this and this to the same point, so that we can compute the equivalent worth in this particular problem. That is how much we want to save every 3 months for 10 years in order to pay for our tuition for the next 4 years. And we are at the beginning of the 5th year. Okay. Next. Okay, so I think I'll stop. I'll pause here, allow you to have maybe 10 minutes of break, and we'll come back. I'll just summarize a little bit of this, and we'll move on to the next chapter. Let's have a 10 minutes break.